Adam, if you have an employee come to you and they tell you that they have some sort of diagnosis and indicate that they're not going to be able to work, like what should you do as an employer?
This is a tricky one, and this is the one that, if you don't evaluate this and handle this properly, you can violate one or more laws, because many laws can be implicated by this fact pattern. So the first thing to do is find out a little bit more about this diagnosis without doing a full deep dive into someone's medical history, but just to understand what it is and how this diagnosis may impair the employee's ability to work. If someone says I have a sniffle, it's a lot different than someone saying they have a broken leg. And if it's like, walking and, walking is part of their job, etc., you will evaluate those two things differently. So you try to learn a little bit more about the medical condition and how it relates to the job. And once you have that information, then you can talk to the employee and see, what is the extent of this in terms of how long will you have this issue? Is this a permanent medical condition? Is this one that is for a few days? Is this one for a few weeks, months, etc.? And the answer to that will then dictate how you handle things further, as well as the nature of the employee's position, which, depending on what the employee does for you, can the employee be limited in that particular position with potentially an accommodation or without one? Or does the employee potentially need to take a leave of absence? And if there is, let's say it's the latter, a leave of absence, what laws apply to your business, which will be based on the size of your business in terms of how many employees you have, where your employees are located. Do you have something like a short-term disability policy? If it meets those requirements to potentially file for short-term disability. So there's like a whole host of things that can be triggered once you learn more about this medical condition, the extent of it, and how it relates to the position. But what you should not do as an employer is just say, okay, employee, you told me you can't work because of your medical diagnosis. Well, if you can't work here. Okay, meaning you terminate the employee. Because what that will do inevitably is result in a potential ADA lawsuit or some other type of employment claim. So the takeaway from this video is essentially to dig a little bit deeper, not to the point where you're getting in, like I said, to the employee's entire medical history, but just to learn enough to be able to evaluate the extent of the extent of the medical condition. Does it qualify as a disability? And how it relates to the position, so that you can evaluate, is this something you can accommodate? Does the employee need a leave of absence? And how long is this process all going to unfold?